Hi, Analisa Six here to bring you the June 2023 horoscope for the zodiac sign of Gemini for sun and rising placements. I'm here with the sober curator, Lady of Leisure is my blog that I post these to, and we are in Gemini season. We are in your season, so happy birthday to all of the Gemini June babies out there. I have a lot of Gemini dominant people in my life, and Leo and Gemini tend to get along very, very well. Y'all are crazy though. Crazy in a different way. Leos are crazy too. We're all crazy, but Gemini is a special kind of crazy, and it's a lot. I love you guys though. So many of my favorite people are either Gemini sun or Gemini rising. And my brother is a Gemini. My stepdad is Gemini rising and moon. My sister is a Gemini moon. I don't really have a lot in Gemini. My descendant is Gemini, and then I have Ceres in Gemini. So I definitely have, like, an angle, which is significant, and Ceres, which is significant. But other than that, not a lot. But I am very mercurial. My moon in Placidus is in the third house, which is the Gemini house. And I have Mercury in Virgo, which is a good placement for Mercury because it rules Virgo as well as Gemini. So I really tend to vibe well with other mercurial dominant people, and I really enjoy Gemini season. Usually the sun is making a lot of positive aspects in my chart, also some negative ones just because there's oppositions and squares going on, but for the most part, I think this is a great time of year. We're going to get into your horoscope here and talk about how this month of June is impacting you. I tend to associate June more with Gemini energy than Cancer energy, even though we do enter Cancer season at the end of the month or the last half of the month. But June just feels the whole month just feels very Gemini to me. I'm just making sure my dog is behaving himself because he's got a lot of energy right now. He just ate dinner, and he after dinner has a lot of energy. He's rolling all around. Bruce, what are you doing? Sorry, I'm getting distracted because he's being hilarious. He's like rolling around and he's a French bulldog, and he's rolling around and putting his face and everything, acting all crazy. So your planet, Gemini, is Mercury, and we've had Mercury in Taurus for quite a while. It entered Taurus, I think, in April. Yep, in April, and then it went retrograde, and then we've had it in Taurus, all of May. And it stationed direct in the middle of May, and then we were in the shadow period. And now starting June out, we have Mercury going through the last few degrees of Taurus, and it'll enter your sign of Gemini in June. We'll get into that in a little bit. But where that whole Mercury retrograde took place, we talked about it in the May horoscope video. So I'm not going to get super deep into, Mercury retrograde in Taurus for you, but where it was in the subconscious and in the area that has to do with the past and kind of more of the deeper areas of ourself, our spiritual self, the area that we feel our soul in. Like, that's kind of the area that's been highlighted for you in the horoscope chart for this Mercury retrograde. So it's probably been a really introspective and introverted period of time. And now that Mercury is direct and we're entering June with Mercury at 16 degrees of Taurus and making this kind of direct, crawl through the rest of the sign, the first week of June, you're going to kind of still be feeling some of that energy that you're working through in the subconscious. And so, reflecting on the past, reflecting on, if you're somebody that believes in past lives, like past life regression, and that kind of stuff comes up, our dreams get really enhanced when this area is highlighted in our chart. And so again, this is a horoscope, so you would check and see where it's happening in your personal chart, but that's where it's highlighted for the horoscope. So if you've been having really intense dreams or feeling like it's really important for you to connect more to the spiritual side of your life, working through, kind of the past or things like that have come up for you from the past. Obviously, that's a very Mercury retrograde theme from last month, but just having it in this quadrant, an area, those things come up. The other thing that's happening in this area of the chart, so in May, we had Jupiter entering Taurus. And so Jupiter is in Taurus now, and it's going to be hitting this area of the horoscope for the rest of the year for you. So you do have a big highlight in all of 2023 with Jupiter emphasized in the area that rules the subconscious. And so this is a really powerful time to reflect over this whole year on kind of like these deeper embedded things. There's a lot that I want to say about this that I'm trying to figure out the best way to do it without getting off on too many tangents. But essentially, you know, how we have kind of like a soul nature, there's kind of like this authentic self that is in us innately. And I think that when we're navigating life, there's times when we feel really in alignment with that soul self, and there's times when we don't, right? Like maybe we're on a path for a while that feels like it's in alignment, and then all of a sudden it doesn't feel like it's in alignment anymore. Or maybe we're drawn to somebody or something and we're not quite like, we don't know why necessarily. And then as we're in it, we kind of start realizing like, oh, I'm drawn to this because it's like this thing from my past that I'm attracted to, but maybe it's not serving me anymore. Maybe it's bringing up some other traumas or triggers or experiences that I'm still working through. I know that's kind of vague, but this area of the chart is like that, where we have this subconscious self that is formed, you know, by our childhood, but also potentially by whatever the soul makeup is that makes us us, right? I mean, there's people that when they're children, you know, they're recounting a past life or something like that. And I just think that there's more to this kind of framework of our universe than what we understand. And so I just kind of get the impression that there's this journey for the Gemini individual on your soul relationship to self, in terms of not just your past in the here and now of where you've been in this life, but previous lifetimes, and how you're expanding upon and growing in this life, revolving around who you are in that soul way. I hope that makes sense. It feels really weird and crazy. Not weird to me, but it sounds just like a bunch of bullshit coming out of my mouth right now. But I guess like I'm one of those people where I definitely feel like I've had many past lives. Like I feel like there's an innate soul version of me that is not Analisa. Like I'm Analisa in this life, but I've never really resonated with Analisa. Like the physical form that I was born into, and the story and the narrative of Analisa that I was born into does not align with how I feel in myself on a soul level. Like the soul that was born into the life was like, what the fuck is this shit? You know, like that's how I feel. And so I guess it's kind of what I'm talking about, right? Like we have, like some people don't feel that way. Some people feel very much like their soul and their identity in this incarnation is the same. I think that one of the examples of what's happening in our society right now is people that identify as non-binary or have a hard time with their gender feel a lot of these things, you know, like you don't identify with the physical form that you've been given. And I've felt that way my whole life. I don't identify as non-binary, and I don't identify like I'm just one of those people where it's like I'm mad that I was born a human. So to have all the gender conflict, like I've had the gender conflict when I was a kid, and we didn't have those terms. Like I've always told people, I'm like, God, if non-binary was a thing when I was a kid, that's totally how I would have identified. But I think at this point in my life, it's just I'm a woman. Like I'm comfortable and confident with being a woman in this incarnation. But I know that my soul doesn't feel that way. Like I know my soul is very much like I'm not human. I'm not like, this is just this experience of this lifetime for Analisa, whatever the fuck this is. Like I'm gonna die and move on to something else, you know, like that's how I feel inside. So we all probably feel some version of that in a different way, right? And maybe we don't. Maybe there's some people where they hear that and they're like, that's weird. I don't identify with that at all. I was born human. I feel good being human. I feel good in my body. I feel good with my gender. I feel good with my physical appearance, you know. But I think that it's a very complex conversation. It's very different for everybody. And I think that when we have this area of the chart highlighted, it makes us reflect on spirituality. It makes us reflect on this kind of more existential question of like, who am I? Why am I here? What is my soul's path? What is my soul's journey? What am I doing? Like, what am I? Who am I? Why am I? And Jupiter does that. Jupiter asks those questions. And then when Jupiter is passing through this area, it tends to question those things. It can be very existential. And so doing work around that stuff in a way that's grounded and positive, especially having it in Taurus, is really positive, is good and healthy. When Jupiter's passing through this area, one of the negative effects that can happen is turning to drugs and alcohol or unhealthy modes of escapism, to experience that unification with source energy, or that, like that melting into all and feeling love and feeling encompassed into that universal kind of all, that drugs can give us. That can be a slippery slope, because that can also, while we can maybe have some really amazing spiritual experiences that way, we can also end up with, substance abuse problems, or in situations that are not safe and things like that. So I tend to recommend, because I'm sober, I'm in recovery, and I've done all that stuff, I tend to recommend for people to find a spiritual practice where you can do things like transcendental meditation, dream work, past life regression, lucid dream work, and study that stuff so that you can find healthier, more grounded ways to give yourself those experiences or those connections with source. I'm really into meditation as a means to that. And when you have things passing through here, that's more emphasized or enhanced for you to be able to experience that. The mind, right? Which Gemini rules the mind. We can experience whatever we want in the mind. So knowing that it's okay to just have it, happen there, it doesn't necessarily have to happen in the physical for us to gain something out of it. That's a very like woo-woo kind of conversation to start out with for the horoscope with Gemini. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that are like, this lady's batshit. But that's, hey, we're talking about astrology. Astrology is just, we're all of us that study astrology tend to study these kinds of blown out ideas, these spiritual concepts, because it's what this whole kind of realm is about. And so you can make it into what you need to for you. But I think that either way, as humans, like one of the things that our species, and I'm not saying other species don't do it, because we don't actually know, but one of the things that we perceive as unique to our species is our ability to ask these questions and then also seek the answers. Whereas a lot of other species, they might be asking those questions, but they don't have the capability to really build a spacecraft or study science or do the things that we do to explore the universe the way that we have as a species, to our knowledge, right? I mean, maybe there's other things that they do that we can't see or comprehend or know is happening. I don't know. I don't like assuming things about other species because we don't really know, but we think we know, but do we? So yeah, so those are things that, might be coming up for the Gemini individual over the next year with Jupiter here. We're going to scale back a little bit and start talking about the full moon that happens. So we have a full moon in Sagittarius that happens on June 3rd. And this full moon is happening in the area of the horoscope that has to do with identity and self. And then also our relationships to other people in a romantic way or a partnered way. So we can have partnerships with people that we're not romantic with. Obviously, that can be like our best friends or business partners or people that we see in kind of this like one-on-one, kind of dynamic. And so the sun's going to be illuminating, in Gemini, the house of identity for the whole Gemini season. So there's a lot of vitality brought to your sense of self and the relationship that you have to yourself. So your identity and your ego is kind of getting boosted when the sun is in your sign. And then the moon in Sagittarius is going to be opposing. It's going to be exactly opposite Gemini and Sagittarius. And it's going to be illuminating the area that has to do with partnership and relationship. And so full moons are a great time for manifestation as well as letting things go. So one of two things could happen. If you're somebody that wants to manifest more of a certain type of energy into your relationship that you're currently already in, this is a great time to do that. If you're somebody that's single that wants to manifest a relationship or partner, kind of thing, this is a great time to do that. If you're in a relationship that you're unhappy with and you're ready to end it, this is also a really positive time to do that. So it just depends on where you're at in the spectrum of yourself. The other thing that comes up with the Sagittarius Gemini polarity is our perspectives, the way we communicate those perspectives, and also our values and belief systems around what relationship means to us. And so we might be reflecting a lot on whether or not the people that we're in partnership dynamics with share our same values and beliefs, and whether or not that's something that we care about. We might also be seeking partners that are more in alignment with those values and belief systems during this full moon on the 3rd. There's a fire trine happening during this full moon with Pallas Athena, the moon, and I believe it's going to be Chiron and Aries. And so, you know, we get kind of this desire to feel like where it's hitting in the chart for Gemini is this desire to kind of communicate who we are, what we need in our relationships with other people, socially as well as romantically. And with Chiron in the mix, there's a little bit of a wound maybe around whether or not we feel like we're really connecting with people the way that we want, or whether or not we feel seen by people the way that we want. And so you might be reflecting on whether or not your social circles are in alignment with the values or the beliefs or the things that you want out of your social circles. That's definitely something that kind of gets kicked up with this. Venus is also going to be in Cancer during this full moon. So Venus has been in Cancer since the second week of May, and she's finishing up her cycle in Cancer the first 5 days of June. And then she's going to be entering on the 5th Leo. And so where she's been passing in the Gemini chart has been your financial house. And Venus in the financial house is great. She brings abundance financially. She brings stability. If you've been wanting to make more money, like she's there kind of blessing that area. And now she's about to make her way out of that area and enter Leo on the 5th. And so you have Mars in Leo hitting the area of communication with Pallas Athena there. And that's a very intense energy when it comes to communication. It's really positive in Leo for self-expression when it comes to creative projects. So if you're somebody that really enjoys, you know, being creative and expressing that with others, that's boosted. However, Mars passing through this area, you're more prone to be reactive. You're more prone to get into conflict with people. There's a lot of like fight energy here and reactive energy here. So you do have to be really mindful with your communication when Mars is passing through, because you can be a force. When Venus enters this area, she's going to be here until October. And so Venus is coming through to maybe help bring some balance, some harmony, some resolution to maybe some of the communication dynamics that you've been in that have been hard. She is going to station retrograde at the end of July. And so again, when Venus is retrograde, like there's still definitely some conflict or problems that come up in regards to relationships, but she still wants to resolve things. And so the point is that she comes in, brings up some stuff with Mars. It might be kind of combative and hard once she's retrograde. And then hopefully by the time she stations direct and Mars moves out of Leo, we're in more of this resolution, peaceful place. But it's the story of kind of the rest of the summer. So I think that if you're finding relationships hard or communicating in relationships hard, the area that it's hitting is going to be emphasizing that. So just learning and growing pains, you know, you're just kind of learning how to maybe speak more confidently in relationships. Maybe you need to express your needs more. Leo tends to really feel a need to get a lot of attention and feel seen. And so when it's not getting the attention it wants, or it doesn't feel seen or validated in the way that it needs to, it can get really reactive and frustrated. And so that's an energy, you know, we might all be feeling to some extent with Mars and Venus and Leo together, but it's hitting each of us differently, you know, and it's hitting in the Gemini horoscope and communication. So that just makes things a little bit rockier for you in regards to that area. But again, like Venus wants to bring peace and resolution. So by September, when she stations direct and she's not retrograde anymore, Mars will have already moved into Libra. And so that's still a little bit intense, but she's trying to help kind of resolve things by that point. We'll do the horoscopes in September. We'll see where it's at for you. Venus, though, is sextiling Libra Mars energy. So hopefully that makes it more of a sexy energy that's kind of passionate and fun versus volatile. That's my hope anyways. Shortly after, a few days later, after Venus is in Leo, Mercury is going to finally be moving into Gemini on the 11th of June. And that day is actually really intense astrologically. I got into all of the transits for June in the June Astrology Forecast. And so if you really want to know what each individual transit is for the month and more of a synopsis on that, watch the June Astrology Forecast, because I'm not going to get into every single little transit for the horoscopes. they also are, the transits are more relevant to you in your personal birth chart as well. So I like kind of talking about the overall arching theme in the horoscopes, but in terms of the little nuances for everybody, it's better to look at your individual chart for that. But Mercury, you know, is the ruler of Gemini. It is also the ruler of Virgo, but those are the two signs that it rules. And so when Mercury is going to be in its own sign, it's good. It's positive. It's positive for you as a Gemini dominant person. And so you'll get kind of this like boost of energy that is, you know, it should feel good and feel at home for you in that way. It boosts your mind. It boosts your ability to kind of think more analytically. Gemini is prone to anxiety, so it's not unlikely that maybe your brain is kind of racing and having more of that energy. We might all be feeling a little bit more like that, but it's still a positive placement. And, you know, I think that because it's hitting the area of the self and the identity, this is also a really good time to kind of be reflecting on your relationship to self and how you express yourself, you know, with that Venus Mars hitting the house that Gemini traditionally rules. Your perception of self and how you're expressing that is going to be a big theme in June. Saturn is going to station retrograde on the 17th in Pisces and will be retrograde until November. So that is happening in the area of the horoscope chart that is the career. So there might be some things about your work situation that get maybe a little bit slowed down or stifled over that time. Saturn is such a slow retrograde period that we do feel it, but it's not as noticeable as some of the more personal planets when they station retrograde. Like we're definitely going to be noticing Venus more than Saturn, probably in a more direct way. So let's talk about the new moon before we get into the solstice. So after Saturn stations retrograde, we have a new moon on June 18th at 26 degrees Gemini. So that's also happening in your sign. And again, this is the area of the self. So this is enhancing your relationship to self. It's kind of shining a little bit of attention into maybe areas of the self that you feel like you want to build upon or improve. New moons are a time for setting intentions and kind of like having this deep inwards reflection on something. And so wherever it's hitting in the chart is kind of where we feel guided to reflect. And identity is a big one. So what is your relationship to your identity? Do you feel like you want to set intentions on establishing maybe a different relationship to your identity? Maybe you're looking at having a new identity altogether. That kind of theme could be prominent for you during that new moon, and spending time with yourself too. Like the new moon is a time where we tend to feel more introspective and introverted anyways. And so doing something by yourself where you can do some kind of, you know, self-care activity that stimulates you in a positive way is also important because it's in Gemini. And even though Gemini is like a energy that's natural to you, I think that when the lunar energy is in Gemini, it can be a little bit anxiety inducing. Like we can feel a little bit like our nervous systems are dysregulated. So I think that's a positive time for you to focus on nervous system regulation and doing things that are more grounding if you're feeling like you're spinning out during that time, which is definitely possible, even though it's your energy, right? After that new moon on the 21st, we're going to have our sun enter Cancer, and this is the summer solstice. So we finally enter summer, and Cancer energy in the Gemini horoscope, again, is hitting in your financial house. So the sun's going to be shining a light on money, material security, finances for all of Cancer season. And then the next like energetic shift we have of the month isn't until the 27th when Mercury enters Cancer and joins the Cancer party with the sun. So if you're making plans, if you're kind of trying to do some financial planning, Mercury passing through this area is going to enhance that. So financial planning, financial advisement, and also reflecting on your self-worth is the theme of this transit. And Mercury will be in Cancer up until the end of July. So that's going to be there. We'll talk more about that again next month. But I think that's a pretty good overview. If you, again, want to know more about the transits more in depth, you can head over to the June 2023 Astrology Forecast, where I go into those transits a little bit more in depth. But that's essentially your theme for this month. A lot of communication, identity stuff, you know, kind of reflecting on whether or not the people you surround yourself with are in alignment with your values, and manifesting maybe more partnerships that are in alignment with your values. And a lot of the subconscious theme, you know, reflecting on your relationship to that. So it is a little bit more of an introverted time for you. You might be feeling like it's really important for you to just focus on your relationship to self during this month. That is your horoscope. If you liked it, feel free to hit like, feel free to hit subscribe if you want to be notified on next month's horoscope. You can find me at the sobercurator.com or theladyofleisure.com. And I will see you guys next month. Good luck.